Welcome to the Deliberate Leader podcast for this week. I'm joined by the very lovely Siobhan Mulcahy. Siobhan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited about our conversation. You and I have known each other a very long time. It's going on to a couple of decades at least. And I've had the pleasure of being led by you as a client in most cases, and really getting you to help me, I guess, make some, tough commercial decisions along the way, particularly around employment law. So I'll introduce you properly, but safe to say you've now got a massive team at Gaden's with your own leadership opportunities. So I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Thanks, Rita.
For those of you that don't know Siobhan Mulcahy is a partner at a law firm here in Melbourne, Gaden's. Siobhan has been providing legal advice and representation on all sorts of employment matters for over a couple of decades, and that's obviously where you and I met. You've got, as I said, a large team, which no doubt we'll delve a little bit more into now, given your role at Gaden's. What I've always appreciated as part of your style, and I know I've told you this before, is that commercial piece that you bring. So it doesn't matter what problem that I threw at you in the past, and there were some gnarly ones from an industrial relations perspective, but you've got this uncanny ability that I don't find in a lot of lawyers, which is that ability to kind of cut through really quickly, see the issue, simplify it, and then put in a solve, like a quick fix that works for the organization, but that has significant strategic implications too. So yeah, I've really enjoyed working with you over the years. So I'm excited about our chat.
Thanks. It's a good talker.
Yeah, felt good. And out of curiosity, I imagine that you do get that feedback, but do others tell you about that ability you have to just kind of see a really clear path?
Yeah, I think that like any advisor, it's a bit horses for courses. But I think you find clients who sort of either find your style complementary to them or their own style, or where the way that you go about things is very similar and therefore resonates. So yes, leading with the practical and commercial over the highly technical legal is certainly something that I get a lot of feedback on, and probably where I get my repeat business. But there's time and space for all of it. So it's good to have a big team around me who can provide that other perspective and other way of going about things when that's what's called for.
Yeah. So I think, Siobhan, in that, if I think about what you were saying in just some of those opening comments, like it is that ability to connect and to really understand. And you raise such a good point that often it's the styles, like the mix of the styles and the energy together, then create this spark and this beautiful energy that then takes on a life of its own. From a leadership perspective, how do you create that connection with your team and even other stakeholders that you're working with?
Yeah, look, for me professionally, I think that you use the term energy. I think that's probably something that I not in a sort of a woo-woo way, but just the vibe is probably a big part of how I've been led. I'm probably I am a very intuitive leader. I'm not someone who studies it or is particularly bookish in the way that I've gone about evolving, both in my practice or in the way that I have led and lead. But I think that doesn't mean I'm not deliberate. I am a very, very conscious leader, but I'm not and deliberate, I would say, in all that I do with the way that I build and run my team. And obviously the advice that we provide clients is it's a window into their teams and their people management within the organisations that we advise. So there's not a big difference, because my challenges are their challenges and theirs are mine. So there's this sort of a symbiotic relationship. But I think that, to answer your question of how, I think finding a natural fit that is symbiotic or sympathetic or complementary is the answer. And if you're rubbing the wrong way, or you're finding that you can't communicate, nothing's always easy, but that you should still be able to communicate effectively. And if you're not understanding each other, or you don't even with a little bit of work, or you feel like you can't find an easy rhythm, then it's likely that that those clients or those people are better off with others. I just think they're relationships, and like all relationships, that X factor is about how you connect, and some of it can be described and perhaps scientifically deduced, but a lot of it can't, because it is the vibe.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that intuitiveness in leadership, and also that, that conscious leadership, I guess, sometimes it gets a bad rap, because for a lot of leaders we can't put our finger on why. But I think it's like, as humans, we've got to remember, first and foremost, we're humans, and we are going to feel that vibe and that energy and that connection between people. And I think that's, I love that you brought in deliberate in there, because I reckon that is what creates deliberate leadership, because we lead knowing who we are, but we're also very conscious of the needs of the other person, and that we understand we don't operate in a vacuum or in isolation of that other person. So it's that really beautiful blend of the two.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that what I do read and what I do hear repetitively is that authenticity and vulnerability are some of the really significant attributes that people look for in leaders. We've been doing over the last couple of years here a leadership circle program where you get 360 feedback, and then you work with a coach, and you get feedback from all variety of people within your sphere. And both for myself, but also for those of my team who I've had go through the program, and colleagues who I've worked with through that, that's the one thing that resonates, is that natural, authentic, organic leadership is what people want. So if you've been, like, I mean, what do they say? If you may as well be yourself, because everyone else is taken.
Right.
To me, I think being like, you spend a lot of time at work, and your career is long, and if you are doing what feels right to you, and you're being authentic to who you are intrinsically, well, then hopefully that has value in the context in which you're working, and that is an asset. And if it doesn't, I think you find the place where your style or your X factor does resonate and does have value. And then in those spaces is where you're going to be able to lead authentically, and you're going to resonate with the people around you, because even if it doesn't mean that you would all be the same, but it would resonate, and you find that complementary or symbiotic relationship. So for me, that's really important. It's important from a psychosocial safety perspective as well, because you want to feel good and feel like there's PLU, people like us, like you're an environment that feels right to you. And we've all been in schools or jobs or social environments where you just think, look, these people are all really lovely, but I just don't feel like I fit in here. I think our job as leaders is to, number one, find a place where you do fit in and you can be your best self and create the best impact that you can, but also to make sure that the people who are in your space and in your team are also in the right place and are able to find an environment where they can thrive.
Yeah, it's a really good point, particularly on the psychosocial hazards. I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago, because I feel that the accountability for this fitting in, I think it rests a lot with the leader, but I question that, because I think the accountability piece, and from what you've said there, it's a good reminder that we've all got choice to make around whether we fit in or not. So in terms of that PLU, which I love, the people like us, we're not necessarily looking for sameness, but we're almost looking for, collectively our energies together, do they make up something pretty awesome that feels good to be part of? And I think it's really hard when we're trying to form fit like square peg round hole. I think it's a different matter if there's intentional behavior that is excluding that person, or where that person is not made to feel comfortable. But I think there's also an accountability on the individual to go, well, maybe this isn't right for me, and maybe I've got to then make a decision to find that team and that culture that brings the best out of me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, but but being able to articulate like that recruitment process. So part of it is, should this person be in the organisation, and are they going to be able to thrive? And that's got to work for both parties. But also it's well, which part, how can you work, if you, yes, in the team, but how are you going to thrive even more within a subset of that group, for example, or, you know, who's going to manage to get the best out of that person? We certainly, as our team grows, find that you find your natural rhythms, and there'll be, whether they're personal or professional, kind of synergies, and they might be different for each, that you can kind of be deliberate in ensuring that the person, if, you know, their career pathway is being managed by someone who they find they can really, you know, draw inspiration from, or where there's a natural mentorship. But again, like any relationship, you know, you can go on a million dates, but do you want to marry everybody? No, you don't, because you look at all of the things that add up to being a really good, productive, thriving and sustainable relationship. And I think leadership, it does go both ways, but it's not just at the recruitment stage, it's also just how you manage on the daily.
Yeah, all the way through. And that's sustainability, because otherwise that, I mean, to kind of carry that metaphor further, if you like, that's like really great honeymoon period. But when that's over, then what? Like then we're throwing our dirty clothes on the floor, and the fact that we, you know, the fridge is not organized, and
Toilet seats up, Rita.
Yeah. All of the above, like all those things where we've been there, where we go, oh my gosh, like this isn't, it isn't what I expected. So it's that sustainability piece that comes in too. You mentioned the leadership circle and some work that you've all been, you know, that you've been doing around awareness. Are you able to share what your biggest insight has been through that work?
Yes, and I probably did it about 12, 18 months ago. My biggest insight, I think, was that my self-perception or self-judgment is extremely harsh. And I really didn't expect it to be as much as what it was. And so that, and also I suppose a corollary of that is that I expect a lot of myself, and probably wasn't necessarily utilizing the team around me, like feeling like I had to do everything, which was probably discrediting me as a leader in terms of how I could best add value to the organization and to the team. Because you've got to, if you're just saying, oh, I have to do it, I can do it, so I will do it, which is my personal style on the home front and the work front, just doing it means you don't have time to be a leader or to have space to think strategically, and that's really, like, that's the money shot. That's why you're in the role that you are. So if you're still in the weeds, then you don't have the time, space, or energy to be what you're really there to be. So for me, the learnings from that have been that, and it probably goes to what we were just talking about in terms of that, deliberately creating a fertile environment for the whole team to thrive and to meet all of your objectives collaboratively. I had a session a year ago, actually, or a year ago in February, with my partner group, and one of the things I did to implement my kind of learnings out of that leadership circle was with pillars that we work to in terms of the firm's overall strategy. And so what we've done is, as a group of partners, developed our core behaviours and values. But then in addition to that, we've got, for each pillar, you know, clients and markets, brand and reputation, people, and so forth. One or more partners is the pillar head. And so that doesn't mean that they're entirely responsible, but it means that they are the sort of lightning rod or the conduit for the team's strategy and management of those pillars. And yes, they should all align, but that has made a huge difference because we're a leadership group. I'm not the leader. We're all leaders. And so each one leading a pillar, and I don't have one. I don't have a pillar. so that's made a big difference, and that was a big learning for me, which doesn't mean you're letting go of the reins. It means that you are leading as a team. And part of being a really good leader is that you empower the people around you to work to their strengths, and that's the way we've allocated them. But then within the people pillar, what we've done is, as the team has gotten, this goes to the sort of deliberate cultivation of a team and a culture. Within the people pillar, we've developed a system. We think that there is a couple of things. One is that I think that younger team members coming through tend to, I find that they're really employees as consumers. And there's very high expectation of a high touch employment relationship in terms of the career development, in terms of their needs. And also like an expectation of a really clear pathway, as opposed to a high trust model where you just work and trust that if you do a good job, you'll get promoted eventually, and you wait for that to happen when somebody thinks it's right, which is how it was when I did it. So what we've done is each partner's been allocated a small number of employees who are their people pillar partner, and they catch up with them on a minimum of once a month. And everything that's non-matter related, the employees can filter it up, but also the partnership group as a leadership group can filter back through. So if there's any issues coming up, they get dealt with really promptly. In terms of having that, working through your goals and having a continuous focus on it, that's used as a lightning rod for that. But also gives the team members FaceTime with mum and dad, like one-to-one, at least once a month, where they get heard. And so even though we want it to be really organic, what I realised is that the bigger that your team is, you don't necessarily know what's going on for everybody all the time. But also, to what we were discussing earlier, you don't necessarily resonate with everybody. And so we want to find some natural rhythms there that are outside perhaps the organic practice-based relationships, but where there's natural synergy, and then that will allow people to thrive.
So it sounds like it's almost a mentoring / leadership structure that sits alongside your typical hierarchical structure, which I think is a great idea, because the person that you report into from a line perspective, as you say, is not always going to be the best person for you to have conversations about issues that are not directly related to your day-to-day work, but maybe more career issues, development issues, communication struggles. How do I influence this person? How do I influence that outcome, which I think is great. So as a firm, have you seen a real difference since implementing that model?
Yeah, it's only in our team. And it was just a bit, as I am prone to, it's a bit of a gut move. Another thing similar to what we've done, and I should say the people who are the non-partners within the team, I think really appreciate it. And I think there might have been a little bit of cynicism about it initially, like it's another meeting. But I think people finding it very valuable. And we also use it in our partner group, which we catch up once a week, to say, I'm having my PPP with X this week. Is there anything that I need to know? Are there any concerns, and that might be pastoral care concerns, or it might be, oh, look, their time recording has been low, or it could be anything, or, we've been telling them they need to do more of Y and they haven't been doing it. Can you put it on the list? So it's performance monitoring as well as mentorship, depending on what the employee needs. But it's mum and dad FaceTime, and no other team's doing it. And I think I can see, in fact, I just had a catch up with a colleague this morning, and he said, I'm copying what you're doing next year. I'm going to give it a go.
Isn't that awesome? That's like the highest form of flattery, isn't it? Isn't that what they say? So
imitation, yeah.
Well, that's good, because obviously they're observing from afar the benefits of doing something like that, and I think it's really smart. It's a way to help to foster a greater connection with people, but also it goes to that aspect of your person is there as a human first and foremost, and then second to that, we're there to care for them and we're there to understand them as a human. So that goes to that high touch that you've observed, in terms of a need. And then we're also driving high performance. So at the end of the day, you're getting that commercial outcome.
Win-win.
Yeah, but you're doing it through that human first lens, which I really love. Yeah.
And hard conversations people avoid. And often, I think, in the law, but in any environment, when you're in the cut and thrust of getting the work done and someone hasn't quite hit the mark, or it's not as good as what you hoped or you think should be better, it can be very difficult in the moment to say, particularly if you're frustrated, to say, listen, that's not up to the mark, or, can we go through this? What it provides is that lightning rod to find a gentle way of sometimes of raising things like, how do you think you're going? Or, it's not necessarily, I want to talk about the fact that you have a million typos in your document drafting and it's not acceptable. It's not a hard line. It's, so one of the things I saw in your performance review was that you wanted to work on having better accuracy in your drafting. How do you think that's going? And then they might then give themselves the feedback that they haven't otherwise thought about. Or it might be an opportunity to say, oh, because so-and-so did mention that perhaps it wasn't quite seeing the improvement that they would like. Maybe you could take the opportunity and initiative to talk with them. So that's kind of coaching. Yeah. But I mean, a lot of organisations are guilty of not having the difficult conversations, having the yearly performance review, and then hitting people with a whole lot of stuff that they know nothing about. And we know as HR that creates flight risk. But what it also means is you've got no opportunity to have been addressing that problem for the 6 or 9 months that it's been going on, and it's probably entrenched. So you're better off to nip it in the bud. So that's kind of, it's all the things, but we're finding it really valuable.
And significant trust impact too when that happens. Because I think, that's the currency of any relationship, right, is trust. So all those things that you're talking about there are deliberate around building that trust. And then we go and whack someone with feedback that they don't see coming, like completely blindside them. And maybe some leaders think that they can do that because, we've got a high trust environment. But the minute we do that, we lose it. One of my favorite quotes on trust is, trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback. It's an old Dutch proverb, but it's that trust needs to be demonstrated in all of those micro actions. And then if we're going to go and do something that really damages someone almost, trust is lost. So irrespective of the support structures and the ways of working that you might have implemented across your organisation.
Agreed. Yeah.
It sounds like that's it's been valuable, Siobhan, in terms of going through that leadership circle. I reckon 360 feedback it can be very challenging, but also very illuminating. And you mentioned that self-perception judgment being quite harsh and having those high expectations, which your reflection was, well, maybe, and I'm paraphrasing here, but maybe you're not relying enough on the team. Have you been able to modify any aspects of how you lead, and are the team, observing that and giving you feedback about that?
Yeah, I think so. I think the pillar thing in terms of having people lead those has been really embraced. I also have a deputy leader who I've worked with previously, who joined a year ago, and who she and I have got very different and complementary skills. And so I think that my ability to say, will you get that and I'll get this, is also another way to, instead of me spending, she's really good with spreadsheets and numbers and getting data and all of that, and I just am not. I'm sure I could be if I wanted to, but I don't. And so she sort of takes the lead on that sort of thing, and then we can just discuss what we've got. So I think that has made a big difference. And what it means is, am I taking my hands off the reins a bit? Yes. Do I accept that I don't know what's happening with everybody all the time? Yes. But do I want to know, one of my partners, who's my people pillar lead, talks about the baby. If I've handed you my baby, I need to know you're looking after them, they're fed, you're going to cuddle them if they cry, you're going to do all the things. I don't want to be waking up in the middle of the night and saying, oh my God, did they feed the baby, or has the baby got their nappy changed, or whatever. She does it better than I do. But she talks about that in the context of delegating work, but I actually think in the context of leadership and sort of diversifying the role, so it's not all me, is the same. Like, and because I've got a group of partners who I've chosen, they're all working to their strengths. They have strengths that I don't have as well. And so if I trust that you've made those good decisions and they've been made in a way that's careful and considered, then I shouldn't be waking up in the middle of the night worrying about the baby. And I don't. And if I do, the problem is not that I've delegated or shared the leadership. The problem is that either I'm low on trust, or that person's not the right person to be doing it, or they're not communicating effectively. So, yeah, short answer, yes, absolutely. I'm confident that my team would say that there's a significant difference. Yeah.
Such a good point, because I reckon, like in any technical role, and yours is, so if you think about, so lawyer, your specialty obviously is employment law, but you could pick an engineer, you could pick a doctor, you could pick an operations leader in FMC, like you could pick literally anyone. When you're moving from that technical expert into leadership, sometimes I think the currency that we value and that we are known for is our hard work, get the job done, and you're a really great technical expert at whatever you do. And then we put people in charge of teams, and we don't necessarily reestablish the baseline on what is now required of you and what do we now deem as valuable as an organization. And it's this classic step in, from middle leadership into executive level leadership, where what you need to lead with and what you're valuable for, what you're known for, actually shifts and changes. It's not an overnight shift, but it does shift. And it sounds like, for you, as you've gone through that journey of, I can now delegate more, I've got a really competent team, I can hand over my baby with trust. To what extent do you reckon that's you kind of redefining your value now in your elevated partnership role?
Definitely significant. I have had to adjust like a lot but I think everybody does as you progress through. It's a bit like if you are the cook in your household and someone says, can I chop the onions for you? And you go, no, I'll do it, because you like them chopped a certain way. The reality is you can chop the onion and still be doing all the other million things, and you're just going to get more and more and more and more stressed. And that's who I am. I want to do the onion my way, and I want to make sure, and also don't want to ask anyone to do anything because I want them to relax, or I don't want to say I can't do it. Like, it's all of those things.
Yeah.
The reality is, if someone else chops the onion differently to you, it doesn't matter. And ego is not part of it. And it shouldn't be that you think that you're the only one who knows how to chop an onion. So you've got to let other people chop the onions, and you also need to decide what's important. Like, sometimes it would be important that it's chopped exactly how you want it to be, but most of the time that thing is just going to cook down and it's going to make absolutely no difference. So I think the same is that's been my progression in my leadership journey as well, is letting other people chop the onions, but also accepting that other people might be better at doing it than me. And we at Gaden's actually have a strength-based model in our partnership contribution framework. So it isn't a one-size-fits-all. And I think we're all different as humans. And if we have a one-size-fits-all measure of contribution or assessment of value, well, then only a small number of people will meet it. But also you're going to have people doing things that they're not that good at, when they could be spending more of proportion of their time doing things they are really good at. And then you holistically get a much better overall outcome. So in our team, again, we've made some experimental changes because we've grown really fast in the last 2 or 3 years. It's almost a ground up growth. We've gone from 2 to 10 partners in Melbourne, Sydney. So really significant, which means very conscious cultural integration, which I think has been a success, but that takes a lot of work. And if I chose to just be focusing on my personal practice, my client-facing practice, and not spending a lot of energy on that, well, then that wouldn't succeed. And so I've made that choice. But then you've also got to then accept that your client base, or the work that you would ordinarily just do yourself, needs to be done by someone else, because unless you go to clone machine, you need to do that.
If you have a recipe for that, let me know.
Let someone else chop. Yeah, I know. This is the thing, I've had to relent and let someone else chop the onions, Rita, because the clone machine is not arrived. I ordered it, it's not arrived. So I think that, and in terms of the like my measure of success, my huge mental shift in the last, particularly the last 12 months has been, but probably the last 2 years, is my measure of success is my team's success, not just financially, although that is significant, but also my team's success as a unit that is, you know, a team of choice where people are happy, my turnover, that people are thriving, engaged, the client attraction and retention, all the things. Yeah. Whereas, and I think as a more senior leader, you have to do that. So it's very much been a team, not a me. And there you do get different outcomes, because if I was focused only on me, I'd be focused on my numbers, my client work, my whatever, and then I wouldn't be doing all these other things that enable everybody else to thrive. But the other thing we've done is, to that strength-based model, is we have got some people in the team who are extremely good at rainmaking. So they're just client relationship magnets, right? If that person is doing all of that work, then they don't have the energy or the time to bring in more. But then I've got some more junior partners who are good at it, but they're really good at turning a small seed into a forest. So why not have my rainmaker making rain, and then, you know, and throwing the seeds to the others? We're finding that extremely successful. If you have a one-size-fits-all measure of success and not a strength-based model, that doesn't work, because it's counterproductive, and because that rainmaker is not going to hand those things over, and those people won't want to do them, because then they're doing it to the cost of their own success.
Yeah, it's very much that individualistic, you know, goal, and being driven by individualistic benefit versus that collective benefit. But in that collective benefit, it doesn't sound self-sacrificing at all, because in fact, you know, there's
all win.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess there's that development of the individual in that, but also of the firm, which is super important. I wanted to ask you, what's been your biggest leadership challenge? So throughout all the years that you've led different people in different organizations, what would you say has been that moment that you've just gone, oh, that was really difficult and challenging, but I'm really glad I went through it?
I think that I think it would be going into something thinking that you have values alignment and realizing really quickly that you don't. And I find, because I'm a really gut-led person, let alone leader, I find I won't distribute, market, or ask others to drink Kool-Aid that I won't drink enthusiastically myself. And so in an environment where I feel like there's a real values misalignment, and where people who are my people are not going to be treated in a way that I think is right, I find that just, you know, for me, that was, my body was screaming, you know, at me. But then you have that compromise of, well, I've invested this, and I'm, you know, it's not necessarily you that's being treated badly. But I think that's been a leadership challenge, to be part of the management team and be appropriate and not undermining, but find a message that I was comfortable in delivering, and so find a middle ground. Ultimately, there was an exit, but there was certainly a period of time, as in I chose to exit stage left, but certainly for a period of time, I found that quite compromising as a leader. I think my personal guide has always been two things. One is that you treat people how you want to be treated. I think if you start with that, I say that to my clients as well. I say it when I'm doing respect at work training, like you really can't go wrong if you put yourselves in someone else's shoes and you say, how do I want to be treated? Whether it's a leadership decision, whether it's a what's the right thing to do here, putting aside what the law might allow you to do. I think that being an environment where you are management, but you're not necessarily the ultimate decision maker, and people are not being treated the way that you want to be treated, for me, that's a deal breaker. Not on every little thing, but because obviously you can't align on everything, but on the fundamentals. So one, treat people like you want to be treated. The other one for me has always been a guiding principle of that I like to work somewhere where the people who are making decisions know the people that they're making them about.
Yeah.
That's just personal for me. And obviously the bigger that you get, the harder that is. But you can still, even if you don't know the person personally, you could, like if I'm on the board at Gaden, so I don't necessarily know everybody in the firm, but there's enough intimacy still in the firm that I can find out information about the individual that a decision's being made about, and that can inform and form part of the decision. And I think that's probably an EQ thing, but it's also a value thing for me. I just, as you said before, the human is first in people management. And I think even if it doesn't change your decision, understanding the impact on someone and understanding the contextual environment that the decision is going to impact in is really important to me personally.
That's it's really insightful to hear you say that, because I think the lack of values alignment too often, I reckon people hang around hoping that it will change, and then there's the judgment that we put on whether it's right or wrong. So some organizations may choose to adopt particular values that won't always align to your personal values. And I reckon that's where it goes back to that accountability of the individual, and to where we started our conversation really about energy and whether you're fit, and that individual then making the decision, unless it's something that's, terribly malicious or intentionally causing harm. But I reckon that's spot on around finding that values alignment, because when we find that values alignment, it creates the conditions for us to do really great work. Like then we can kind of go, okay, shoulders back and down. I can just relax into what I'm here to do, and then do a really good job at doing what I am here to do. Yeah, good. So I reckon, the leadership challenges. What did you learn from that, Siobhan? Because we often think about, gee, something I really regret that happened, or I wish it hadn't happened. But what was your biggest learning from that?
I learned, it probably consolidated for me what my core driver values are, and everyone's are different, and sometimes they change a little bit through life. And I think sometimes when you're in that sort of ascendancy of your career in a corporate environment, there can be a temptation to think that being a bit bloodthirsty or a bit cutthroat or a bit, money focused is a good thing, that it gives you a hard edge, and it's just business, that kind of thing. I'm okay with people who operate that way. A lot do. It just doesn't sit with me. And I like money and I like nice things and all of that, but you couldn't have paid me enough. Like it just isn't a price on it, because I don't know, I guess I'm fairly passionate about what I do, and as are, people who those things are the driver, but my driver is probably feeling good about what I'm doing and enjoying the people, including clients that I'm working with. And the same would go for, you know, if you take clients on that you don't really resonate with, it's like marrying someone because you decided you want to get married at 25 and they're sitting on the chair when the music stopped. It doesn't work.
That's right.
And so, yeah, that's what I learned is that those values are important enough to me that I prioritize them. And also being really conscious about what I missed and what's important. And I think, you know, to use the flip side of it, as leaders, you know, we've just had a series of seasonal clerks come through here, and myself and the chairman had an Ask Us Anything session. And I think it's incumbent upon us as leaders to try and be able to deduce and articulate what that special sauce ingredients are of our culture. And part of that is the marketing piece to get the right candidates. But it's also, I talk to them about, you know, look at what feels good. Think about when something doesn't feel good, and then try and ask yourself why. And then see when that feeling comes up again, and then ask yourself why again, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
Being really conscious and deliberate as someone who's coming up, and also as a leader. Why is that person not succeeding? Why do I feel like they're not thriving? Is it that they don't have the skills, or is it not a cultural fit? Can I alter that? Can we skill them up? Can we, like, you know, it's got to be, you'd be constantly trying to find the best rhythm so everybody's thriving, and being deliberate in it is the answer. But also you need to be, if you make a mistake, whether it's me going to that organisation or whether it's me hiring someone who turns out to be a bad fit, I need to really have done the work to say, what did I get wrong and why, and how can I not repeat that?
Yeah, I think that and that's good that you're highlighting it for those that are coming through at such an early stage in their career, so they can actually be thinking about, well, what is that, as you said, that secret sauce, but what is it that I need to be looking for, so I know that I'm in the right environment, and so I know that I'm in an environment that can really help me grow and to flourish. That's awesome. I think, Siobhan, there are so many pearls of wisdom that you've shared with us today. And for those leaders that are listening, I think irrespective of what industry we find ourselves in, what you've been able to share, and what my takeaways are from this conversation is that paying attention to that energy and your intuition as a leader is super important. And also the benefit of doing that self-awareness. So through whatever tool it is, but really spending time thinking about what's going to serve me, but also what's going to serve my team. And it sounds like over the last, 18 months, 2 years, you've been able to put in some really good strategies that have addressed some of those areas. So on behalf of all the listeners, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining the Deliberate Leader podcast. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thanks for having me. It's always good to talk.
See you next time. Thanks, Siobhan.